The wind whipped across the cemetery, a cruel, icy blade that had nothing to do with the crisp October air. It cut straight through my black wool coat, through the thin facade of composure I'd glued together that morning, and found the raw, shuddering core of me. I stood apart, a solitary figure in a sea of somber suits and veiled hats, watching the mahogany casket suspended over the earth that would claim my father. My anchor, my only ally. Around the grave clustered the mourners, distant cousins, business associates, my stepmother Alina in a hat so large and black it seemed to absorb the very light, and my brother Julian. He stood at the head of the gathering, his posture perfect, his jaw set in a line of what everyone mistook for noble grief. I knew it for what it was, the calm before the conquest. The eulogies had been a parade of hollow accolades. The minister spoke of a pillar of the community. A business partner mumbled about integrity and vision. Julian, in a voice thick with manufactured emotion, spoke of carrying on a legacy. Not one of them mentioned his laugh, a booming sound that could shake the rafters of our old lake house. No one spoke of the way he'd secretly taught me to change a tire when I was 16, saying, "Independence is the real inheritance, Chloe." They were burying a caricature. The real man, my dad, was already gone, and they were just disposing of the shell. As the minister began the final prayer, my eyes, dry and burning, locked with Julian's. His gaze was a cold, flat slate. No sibling solidarity, no shared sorrow, just assessment and dismissal. The prayer ended. A muted shuffling began as people turned to leave, offering stiff, wordless nods to the family. I couldn't move. My feet were roots, burrowing into the damp grass beside my father's grave. I needed just one more moment, one private whisper into the void to say goodbye. That's when Julian approached. He didn't walk with the hesitant steps of a grieving son, but with the purposeful stride of a CEO approaching a delinquent employee, which, technically, I was. I was the director of community outreach for our father's company, Alden and Sons. The Sons had always been a bitter joke, as Julian never let me forget I was just a daughter. "Chloe," he said, his voice low but carrying in the hushed space. It wasn't a greeting. It was an opening gambit. "Not now, Julian," I whispered, my throat tight. "It has to be now. Clean break." He adjusted his cufflink, a platinum piece that had been our father's. "Effective immediately, your position at Alden and Sons is terminated. HR has your separation paperwork ready. You'll be escorted from the corporate property should you attempt to return." The words didn't make sense at first. They bounced off the numb shield of my grief. Fired? Here, now. The audacity was so vast, so violently inappropriate, that a disbelieving laugh choked in my chest. "You're joking. You can't be serious. Dad's gone," he cut in, his voice as sharp and final as the shovel that would soon fill his grave. "The board confirmed me as CEO this morning. The company's direction is changing. Your little charity projects, the community gardens, the literacy programs, they're a financial drain. We're streamlining, cutting dead weight." I felt the eyes of the remaining mourners on us, sensing a scene. Alina lingered nearby, a faint, satisfied curve to her lips. This was their moment. The coup was complete. My father's body wasn't even in the ground, and they were dismantling his heart, piece by piece. My work at the company wasn't a little charity project. It was the embodiment of his belief that success was meaningless without giving back. It was his legacy, and they were branding it as dead weight. "He built those programs," I hissed, my fists clenching at my sides. "They were his pride. You know that? Sentiment doesn't turn a profit," Julian replied coolly. "Clean out your desk by Monday. And Chloe, the lake house is part of the estate's assets. I've already listed it. I'd advise you to remove any personal trinkets before the open house next week." The lake house, the last place I'd felt my father's presence, the repository of every happy memory from a childhood that had ended when my mother died. And Alina arrived with her steely ambition and her perfect, calculating son. They weren't just firing me, they were erasing me, selling my history to the highest bidder. Tears of pure, unadulterated rage finally blurred my vision. Not grief for my father, that would come later in wrenching, private waves, but fury at the monstrous injustice of it all. I was about to scream, to unleash a torrent of accusations that would shatter the cemetery's decorum forever, when a sound cut through the tense silence. It was a crackle, then a hum. The sound system used for the service, a pair of discreet speakers on stands near the minister, hadn't been switched off. A whine of feedback made several people flinch. And then a voice filled the air. "Testing, 1, 2, okay, seems to be recording. Let's hope I never need this, but if you're hearing it, well, I suppose I've finally taken the long nap." The world stopped. The wind died. Every head, including Julian's and mine, snapped toward the speakers. It was my father's voice. Not the frail, tired voice of his last months, but the robust, warm, slightly gravelly baritone of his prime. The voice that had read me bedtime stories, cheered at my soccer games, and whispered, "I'm so proud of you, kiddo," on my graduation day. A collective, gasping rasping inhale swept through the mourners. Eleanor's hand flew to her throat. Julian's mask of control slipped, revealing stark, panicked confusion. "Hello to whoever's gathered," the recording continued, a touch of wry humor in its tone. "I'm guessing it's a somber affair. Black suits, bad casseroles, the whole 9 yards. Sorry to miss it. Sort of." A few shocked, watery laughs escaped from the crowd. I stood frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. Now I've left a proper will with my lawyers. Very official, very boring. But I've learned that sometimes the official channels need a little personal reinforcement. So I made this. A few months ago, I had a feeling. Call it a father's intuition. Or maybe I just know my family too well. Julian's face had drained of color. He took an involuntary step toward the sound technician, who was frantically fiddling with a laptop, his face pale with horror. "Stop it," Julian commanded, but his voice was a strangled whisper lost in the clarity of my father's recorded words. "First, to my wife, Eleanor," Dad's voice said, and it gentled. "You brought order to my chaos after Margaret died. For that, I will always be grateful. The trust I've established will provide for you comfortably, as outlined, but the company was never yours. It was built with Margaret's spirit, and it belongs to our blood." Eleanor stiffened, her lips pressed into a bloodless line. "To my son, Julian," the voice grew firmer, the warmth receding into something more analytical. "You have a brilliant strategic mind. Your ambition is a force. But a company, like a family, needs a heart as well as a brain. You've shown a concerning tendency to value the bottom line over the people who help create it. So, while you retain your seat on the board and a significant shareholding, you are not, and will never be, the CEO of Alden and Sons." A murmur rippled through the crowd like an electric current. Julian looked as if he'd been physically struck. He swayed on his feet, his eyes wide and uncomprehending. "Which brings me to my Chloe." My father's voice changed completely. It softened, suffused with a love so palpable it was a physical embrace in the cold air. "My firecracker, my conscience. You saw the soul of the business when others just saw spreadsheets. The community programs, the employee outreach. That wasn't charity, my dear. That was our foundation. That was what made us more than just a name on a building. It's why I amended the bylaws of the company and my will 6 months ago, naming you, Chloe Margaret Alden, as the chief executive officer and controlling shareholder of Alden and Sons. The lawyers have the documents. It's ironclad." The air rushed from my lungs. The ground seemed to tilt. CEO, controlling shareholder. He'd named me after my mother for a reason, he'd always said. Now I understand the depth of it. "It won't be easy," Dad's voice went on, as if he were standing right beside me, a hand on my shoulder. "Julian will fight it. Eleanor will scheme. Some board members will balk. You'll have to be smarter, tougher, and more compassionate than all of them combined. But you can do it. You have her strength, and you have my stubborn faith in you. Lead with that heart of yours, kiddo. Don't let them harden it. And for God's sake, save the lake house. Your mother loved that place." A sob broke from me, not of sadness, but of overwhelming, seismic relief and love. He'd known. He'd seen the storm coming and had built an ark for me. "To everyone else," the recording concluded, the folksy tone returning, "thank you for coming. Have a drink on me. Tell a funny story about the old days. And remember, just because I'm not there in person doesn't mean I'm not keeping an eye on things. Love you all. Especially you, Chloe. Be brave." The recording ended with a soft click. The silence that followed was absolute, profound, and deafening. It was broken by the sound of Julian's sharp, furious exhale. He turned on me, his eyes blazing with a toxic mix of humiliation and rage. "You," he spat. "You orchestrated this. This is some sick, manipulative." It was his voice, Julian, a deep voice interjected. It was Mr. Henderson, the senior partner of my father's law firm, who had been sitting quietly in the back row. He stood now, holding a sleek digital recorder. "I have the original file, time-stamped and authenticated, delivered to me by your father for precisely this kind of contingency. The amended bylaws will have already been filed with the court. The board was informed via encrypted email 10 minutes ago." He gave me a small, solemn nod. "Congratulations, Ms. Alden. The company is yours." The next few hours were a surreal blur. The cemetery emptied in a hushed, chaotic rush, whispers flying like startled birds. Julian and Eleanor left first, stalking to their town car without a backward glance. Their world, the one they'd so confidently divided, blown to pieces. Back at the dreary reception in my father's, now my sprawling Tudor home, the atmosphere was split. One group, the old guard and the true friends, surrounded me, offering teary congratulations and fierce handshakes. The other group, Julian's allies, clustered in corners, speaking in low, anxious tones, shooting me looks of wary reassessment. Mr. Henderson pulled me aside into the oak-paneled study, the scent of my father's pipe tobacco still lingering. "He was very specific, Chloe," he said, handing me a thick envelope. "The transition will be challenging. Julian still holds 30% of the shares. He will be a formidable adversary on the board. But your father's instructions were clear. You have a controlling interest. You set the vision. He believed you were the only one who could honor the past while building a future. The weight of it settled on me, not as a crushing burden, but as a purpose, a mission. My grief was still there, a hollow ache, but it was now lined with a blazing sense of responsibility. The battle began the very next Monday. I walked into the Alden & Sons headquarters, a soaring glass tower in the heart of the city, not as the head of a sideline department, but as the CEO. The news had spread. The receptionist's eyes went wide. Employees I'd worked with for years looked at me with new, uncertain respect. Some smiled with genuine warmth. Others, those aligned with Julian, avoided my gaze. My first act was to call an all-hands meeting. Standing on the dais in the large auditorium, facing a sea of expectant and skeptical faces, I saw Julian seated in the front row, his expression icy. "Many of you were at the cemetery on Saturday," I began, my voice clear and steady, echoing my father's advice to be brave. "You heard my father's last message. His trust is the greatest honor of my life. I won't pretend this isn't awkward, or that the path ahead is simple, but my father built this company on two principles: excellence in our work and integrity in our conduct. That integrity means valuing every person in this room. It means our community programs aren't a line item to be cut. They're our signature. We will be profitable, yes. We will be competitive, but we will do it without sacrificing our souls. I am here to lead, but I am also here to listen. My door is open." There was a moment of silence, then a ripple of applause that grew, starting from the back, from the junior analysts, the marketing associates, the people who had benefited from the programs Julian deemed expendable. Julian did not clap. The weeks that followed were a masterclass in corporate trench warfare. Julian used his board seat to challenge every initiative, from budget allocations to marketing plans. He called emergency meetings, filed procedural objections, and whispered in the ears of skittish investors about emotional leadership and risky sentimentalism. But I had my father's foresight on my side. The legal foundations were unshakable. More importantly, I had the people. I spent my days in meetings, yes, but also on the factory floor, in the break rooms, listening. I reinstated the tuition reimbursement program Julian had planned to axe. I fast-tracked the green initiative for our packaging. I defended the community garden project in a tense board meeting, presenting data that showed its positive PR impact and its role in local talent recruitment. The lake house was my sanctuary. I moved in the weekend after the funeral, blocking the realtor's calls. It was a fight. Julian tried to have me legally removed, claiming it was an estate asset in probate, but Mr. Henderson produced another document, a separate deed, signed over to me a year prior for $1 and boundless love. It was mine, free and clear. Sitting on the porch at dusk, looking over the water where my father taught me to fish, I felt his guidance. I'd talk to the silence, outlining my strategies, my fears. The answers didn't come as a voice, but as a deepening resolve. The turning point came 3 months in. A major contract was up for renewal with a longtime client, a retail giant. Julian, leveraging his old relationships, had been working behind the scenes to push a revised, more profitable but less sustainable deal for them, while also angling to take over the account personally. He set up a final presentation, clearly intending to outmaneuver me. The morning of the meeting, I didn't go to the office. I went to one of our community tech hubs in an underprivileged neighborhood, a project my father and I had launched. I brought the client's CEO, a man named Robert Davies, with me. I didn't pitch him a contract. I showed him a classroom of kids learning to code on our donated equipment. I introduced him to a single mother who trained with us and now worked in our IT department. I showed him the Alden & Sons logo, not on a letterhead, but on a child's bright, hopeful face. "This is our supply chain, Robert," I said quietly as we watched. "This is where our next generation of innovators comes from. This is the loyalty we build, not just with contracts, but with conscience." He was silent on the ride back. In the boardroom that afternoon, Julian was ready with polished slides and aggressive margin projections. He was mid-sentence when Robert Davies held up a hand. "I've seen enough," he said. He looked at Julian, then at me. "My father did business with Benjamin Alden. He said you could trust Ben's handshake more than any lawyer's document." I was beginning to wonder if that died with him. He turned his full attention to me. "What I saw today, that's the company Ben talked about. That's the partner we want. We'll renew on the terms Chloe proposes." roses. It was a victory that resonated through the company. The murmurs of dissent quieted. The board's skepticism hardened into respect. Julian's influence began to wane, his constant challenges starting to look less like shrewd oversight and more like petulant obstruction. One evening, late in my office, he came to see me. The fury was gone, replaced by a weary, bitter defeat. "You played the sentiment card perfectly," he said, not looking at me, but at my father's portrait on the wall. "It's not a card, Julian," I replied, closing a folder. "It's the foundation. He knew you'd see it as a weakness. He knew I'd see it as our strength." He finally met my eyes. He never believed in me the way he believed in you. For the first time, I didn't see my adversary. I saw my brother, a boy who'd lost his own mother young, who had tried to earn a love he felt was always conditional by being perfect, by being the son. My heart ached for him, even as I knew I could never let him undermine what our father had built. "He believed in your mind," I said honestly. "He just feared your heart had been mortgaged to ambition. There's still a place for you here, Julian, but it's not at the head of the table. It's beside it if you can accept that." He didn't answer. He just turned and left. The war wasn't over, but the pivotal battle was won. A year to the day after the funeral, I stood at the lake's edge at dawn, a soft mist hovering over the water. The company was thriving, more profitable than ever, and our employee satisfaction scores were at an all-time high. The community programs were expanding. I'd kept my promise. I poured 2 cups of coffee from the thermos I'd brought, setting one on the weathered wooden dock beside me. "Hi, Dad," I whispered to the quiet morning. "It's been a year. It's still hard. I miss you every day, but we did it. The heart's still beating. I'm leading with it just like you said." A loon called across the water, a lonely, beautiful sound. The sun broke over the pines, painting the world in gold. I sipped my coffee, the warmth spreading through me. He'd left me with more than a company. He'd left me with a compass, calibrated to true north, integrity, compassion, courage. And as I watched the light dance on the water, I knew, with a certainty as deep as the lake itself, that he was proud. If you found yourself rooting for Chloe to find her strength and claim her legacy, then you understand that the most powerful inheritances aren't always about money or power. They're about truth, love, and the courage to stand up for what's right. This story is a reminder that even in our darkest moments, a voice of love can cut through the silence and change everything. If you believe in second chances, in justice, and in the unbreakable bonds of family, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories where the underdog finds their roar. Tell us in the comments, what would you have done if you were in Chloe's shoes? Until next time, remember, sometimes the final word isn't really the end, it's just the beginning.